these a little bit out of order just so that we can get legislators to their 1:30 committees. I want to first off open a hearing on House Bill 2605 designating a portion of U.S. Highway 36 as the Deputy Sheriff Brandon Gady Memorial Highway. Chris, can you give us an overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, good afternoon. House Bill 2605 designates a portion of U.S. Highway 36 in Phillips County as the Deputy Sheriff Brandon Gady Memorial Highway. So Section 1 provides that the highway designated on US 36 would be in Phillips County from the eastern city limits of Phillipsburg to the western city limits of Phillipsburg. Same as always, the signs designating the highway won't be placed until the Secretary of Transportation receives 150% of the cost and for any future maintenance for the signs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Chris? Okay, seeing none. Let's look at the, everybody has a chance. I'm not sure if the fiscal note's in there or not. Some of those fiscal notes were running a little bit late, so I don't see anything. So we'll move on to the first conferee, and the first conferee today is Representative Ken Rogers. Welcome to the committee, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on House Bill 2605. I'm Ken Rogers, member of the House of Representatives in the 110th District. And I'm here to encourage your strong support for HB 2605. As you just heard, this bill would designate a portion of U.S. Highway 36 through the community of Phillipsburg in Phillips County, the Under Sheriff Brandon Gady Memorial Highway. Now, this will be a technical change we'll need to make either now or in the Senate. I think we had it as Deputy Sheriff, but Under Sheriff Gady that's what it should be, and I apologize for that error. Under Sheriff Brandon Gady served Phillips County with integrity, humility, and a deep sense of duty. He was the kind of public servant who showed up, not for recognition, not for awards, but because he believed in protecting the people of his community. You'll hear more about this, Leo, from our Phillips County Sheriff, Kyle Pinkerton, in just a few moments. In June, while responding to a call, Under Sheriff Gady confronted a dangerous situation that escalated without warning. He acted with courage, professionalism, and commitment to the safety of others. Tragically, he lost his life that day in the line of duty. On a personal note, a few years ago when we got some of us got those strange bags in the mail. At the time, Deputy Gady came in front of my house and spent 7 hours to make sure that me and my family were safe. His death is not just a loss for Phillips County, but a loss for the Sheriff's Office, state of Kansas, and every Kansan who depends on the quiet, everyday bravery of law enforcement officers who wear the badge and put themselves in harm's way so the rest of us can live safely. Renaming this portion of Highway 36 is more than just a symbolic gesture. It's a public acknowledgement that Deputy Gady's sacrifice mattered, that his service will not be forgotten, and that the people of Kansas honor those who give their lives in defense of their communities. Thousands of residents, travelers, future generations will see and say his name and be reminded of the values he embraced: courage, service, commitment to others. This designation also offers a small measure of comfort to Deputy Gady's family, friends, and colleagues. It ensures his legacy is woven in the landscape of the community that he served and protected. It stands as a permanent reminder that Kansans remember their heroes. We don't think things like this happen in communities of our size, but sometimes they do. Our hearts go out to all that had involvement in this tragedy, as well as the community as it continues to heal. It is my hope that this designation will bring comfort and healing to his widow Carly, his 3 precious children, and all his family. I respectfully urge the committee to advance House Bill 2065 and help ensure that Deputy Brandon Gaedy's sacrifice is honored in a manner befitting his service. Thank you for your time and consideration. Questions if there are any.
Anybody have any questions for Representative Rogers? Representative, I do have one question. It looks like the bill is deputy. Is it supposed to be under sheriff?
Should be under sheriff.
Under sheriff is correct thing. So Chris, can you make sure that, and we may let the sheriff, when he testifies, confirm exactly how we would like for it to be changed?
Very good.
And that was the only change that needed to be done. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much, Representative. Next proponent is Kyle Pinkerton, Sheriff of Phillips County. Welcome, Mr. Sheriff.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to and the honor of being invited to speak today in support of this bill. I believe is both appropriate and well-deserved. I did have the deputy sheriff, but I do fully support the under sheriff, as that's what Brandon was. My name is Kyle Pinkerton, and I serve as the sheriff of Phillips County. I had the privilege of working alongside Brandon for several years and of watching his career grow from the very beginning. Brandon began his service in the Phillips County Sheriff's Office in 2017, transferring from the Thomas County Jail. From this first day, he demonstrated a genuine desire to serve others and a strong commitment to the responsibilities of this profession. Brandon was the first deputy I ever personally trained. And through that process, we developed a professional relationship that continued to grow over the years. It quickly became clear that Brandon was well suited for this work. In other words, he was born for it. He approached every situation with empathy, fairness, and respect. What I can tell you personally is that Brandon was the kind of deputy every sheriff hopes to have in their office. He was the person others trusted, the person newer deputies looked up to, and the person you could count on to do the right thing, even when no one else was around. His presence raised the standard for everyone around him, and his loss was not only felt within our office, but across our entire community. I had people Brandon had arrested tell me he had changed their lives, and in some cases, that he had saved their lives. Part of what made Brandon special was his personality. He had a sense of humor, he was genuinely himself, and he helped keep spirits up, even on difficult days. Even when he didn't intend to, his words and his actions often resulted in a smile from his coworkers. The community came to know and respect Brandon for his dedication and for the compassion he showed to those he served. He was dependable, steady, and deeply committed to doing the job the right way. As his responsibilities increased, so did his leadership. And in 2024, I appointed him as undersheriff of Phillips County. Even in that role, Brandon never lost sight of the people he served. He remained approachable, willing to listen, and focused on helping others, even in difficult circumstances. On the night he was killed, Brandon did not retreat or hesitate. He gave his life protecting the community he loved and had dedicated himself to serving. A memorial highway serves as a lasting and visible reminder of Brandon's service and ultimate sacrifice. It ensures that his name and his commitment to public service are not forgotten, and that future generations understand the cost and the responsibility carried by those who serve in law enforcement. On behalf of Brandon's family, his colleagues, and the community of Phillips County, I respectfully ask for your support in this designation. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Sheriff Pinkerton. Does anybody have any questions for Sheriff Pinkerton? Representative Wilburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How old was Brandon when he
He just
died?
turned 30.
Wow. Thank you.
Any other questions by any of the representatives? I just want to say, you know, testimony like this always kind of brings to light the dangers of the profession you have chosen, you know, to protect us in our society. So thank you for your service, and our hearts go out to Brandon's family.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other comments? Okay. Do we have any other proponent testimony? Do we have anybody online to testify? Okay. Do we have any opponent testimony? Any neutral testimony? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the hearing on House Bill 2605. I want to remind everybody, even though I've closed it, we have written only proponent testimony from Daryl Atterbury with the Kansas Association of Chiefs of Police Legislative Chair, Sheriff Easter, KSA Legislative Chair, and Chief Paul Schlifke with the Kansas Peace Officers Association. All right, committee, the next bill we're going to hear today is House Bill 2584, permitting a license to request that the licensee's mailing address be provided on a driver's license. Chris, can you give us an overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, House Bill 2584 would permit a licensee to request that such person's mailing address be displayed on a driver's license instead of the residence address that's usually required under that statute. So Section 1 would amend KSA 8-243, which is a statute that provides requirements and procedures for the issuance of driver's license, including what's contained on that license. Current law provides that certain information should be included on a driver's license when it's issued. And among that required information is a requirement that the licensee's address of principal residence is printed on the license. What the bill would do, and I'm looking at page 1 in lines 13 and 14. And so the address of principal residence, if a licensee requests, they could have the mailing address be printed on the driver's license. A corresponding change is made on page 2 of the bill in line 5. And the provisions of the bill would become effective July 1, 2026 if enacted. There are a few technical changes made to that subsection A as well. It's kind of used to be just a big block of text, so it's trying to divide that up and make it a little more readable. I don't think the intent or there are any substantive changes part of those technical changes, but did want to note that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions for Chris? Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris, I don't expect you to know this right off the bat, so if you need to do some research and get back to me, does this, allowing this conflict with any of the federal real ID standards?
Yeah, I believe one of the other conferees might be able to provide that info. I do think it could affect having that real ID
Emblem.
clients like emblem on the driver's license to where it can be used for travel and stuff through airports.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else have any questions for Chris? Yeah, Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would this, it would display like a PO box on the license itself, but would the physical address still be in the system, like in the computer?
Yes, I believe so. The bill is only changing what is to be on a driver's license.
Okay, so if, say, a law enforcement officer run the license number, it would come back on the computer with the street address?
I believe so, as long as that info, and it's required to be given when you apply for a driver's license, the address of principal residence. Yeah, this would only affect the info printed on the license itself.
Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much, Chris. Look at the fiscal note. I know I see Kent Selk in the back there. I kind of want to make sure that we confirm the fiscal note. It says Highway Patrol has no fiscal impact. Says Kansas Association of Counties. But they can't estimate the fiscal impact. Kent, do you want to wait in your your testimony is written only, is that correct? Could you come up, introduce yourself? Have you guys investigated if there's any changes that would cost anything on the computer system or anything?
Thank you, Chairman, members committee. It shouldn't cost anything. The one thing that I had in there, because I was not sure on the bills, if they were trying to display both residential and mailing, there's not any, we don't have physical space to put both of them on the card.
They just want to put,
They just want to
they
put the
want
mailing
the
address.
person to be able to choose which one's on there.
That wouldn't cost us anything because it goes in the print stream that we send to the factory that prints on your license. So you could, in a sense, send the mailing address instead of the residential address to our card producer, and they would put the mailing address on the license.
Are you, how much, have you guys done any numbers on what you'd have to change on your computer system?
It wouldn't be, it'd be minimal.
It would be minimal. And what about this real ID issue that Representative Hoheisel was asking about?
He has a really good point, and it's kind of a little bit of a date. I just talked with Mr. Klump back here. My assumption would be that if you have a mailing address on there, you would be contradicting the Real ID Act because you're supposed to show that you reside in your state. Well, a mailing address is not proof of residency. However, if talking to him, that going in the weeds, I would have to definitely double check it, but it states that as long as Kansas retained, or the state, we're talking about Kansas, retains the residential information to the licensee holder, you could display a mailing address on the license. So I just need to verify that for sure.
You verify that?
Yeah, I need to. I don't want to be wrong or right, but.
Right. I don't want to create any problems, you know, and anyway.
Sure.
Representative Hoheisel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, while we have him up there. And if Chris wants to weigh in here too, the first one, is there any, does the mailing address have to be in the state of Kansas, or the P.O. box have to be located in the state of Kansas?
Go ahead, Chris. I would doubt.
I don't think it's specified in the bill that the mailing address would have to be in the state of Kansas. I think you could only apply for a Kansas driver's license if you do have an address of principal residence in Kansas, but and if you have anything to add on.
And the second question on top of that is, does this apply only to driver's license, not just regular IDs, learner's permits, anything like that? Is this just actual driver's license?
That is more of a Chris question, probably. As written, though, we would probably want to broaden it to some of those things if it doesn't
Yeah,
apply to it.
if we would move forward with it, because a lot of the references I see are just to driver's license, not the other forms of identification. And we have, you know, a homeless population out there that doesn't have driver's license. They just have the actual ID piece of state ID.
Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll have to check on the instruction permits, but for like the ID cards, no, this is not amending any of the ID card statutes. Those are in another place in Chapter 8. So this would only be referring to driver's license, but I'll give a question on, or at least an answer on the instruction permits, because I'm not fully sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Hobson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is, what happens in a situation whereby someone applies for a license with the P.O. box, and a situation where they don't make their payments on the P.O. box and expires? I mean, do they notify the Department about the change, or is inactive P.O. box, or?
Yeah, so just so we're clear, you still have to provide your Kansas residential address to be issued a license. So you can't just give us a mailing address and we would go by it only. So in that instance, if they don't, we're not obviously in charge of their P.O. box or anything of that nature. They want to give it to us as their mailing address, it goes on as their mailing address. And that's where the card, your driver's license would be mailed. It would just come back to us as returned. They would have to, at that time, when they don't get their license, and they reach out to us, and then they can either update it that they've got a different mailing address, or we can mail it to their residential address. But you can't just utilize a mailing address to be issued identification card, CDL, permit, anything. It has to, you have to prove your Kansas residency.
Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could, I got two different questions. The first question is the mechanics of complying with the National Voter Registration Act. So if somebody comes in and they want to apply to, you know, you ask them, you want to register to vote, and they say yes. Do you guys fill out a form? Do they fill out a piece of paper, hand it back to you? How does that work?
So when you say yes to that question, a box obviously pops up for our staff to they can make their party selection. And then I can't remember all off the top of my head, so I'm sorry, because I can't remember the exact box. But what happens is then the address that you have for your license, that information is electronically submitted to the Secretary of State's office. We hand the individual a piece of paper that says, you've made application to register to vote. So you're not registered to vote right there at that time. That's still taken care of by the Secretary of State's office. So we hand them that piece of paper. If there's any questions or problems, the Secretary of State's office is who they would contact, or vice versa, contact them if they see something they don't like.
I lied. I've got 3, Mr. Chair, if that's okay. So, so you're confident that there's not going to be any confusion that you're going to be transmitting the actual residential address, not the PO box address when you do that?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know exactly how all that works when it's packaged and sent to the Secretary of State's office. But from my knowledge, we only send them the residential address. A mailing address isn't something that's sent to them. They only send the residential when they send the data package over.
Then, Mr. Chairman, my other question is the database by which law enforcement finds somebody. If they have a suspicion, or if they have to notify somebody or whatever, is that the license plate database or the driver's license database that they would query to find that information?
So they use ks.gov, but it pulls the information, I do believe, from both sites. But if it comes from us, it will display both addresses to them. So they would still see the residential address.
Does it do that now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was 4. I apologize.
Yeah. Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question has to do with the real ID.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, I'm in Washington, D.C., and I go to check in at the airlines. If just the mailing address does not qualify it to be a real ID, what happens then? Is that going to cause a lot of confusion?
Well, that's where I want to make sure we got some research to make sure we're okay, because we would not feel comfortable then printing something on a license that would invalidate your real ID status. Because you would have a problem, it'd be a moot point. Why would you get a real ID if it's not going to be able for you to use? So I want to make sure that we're in the right lane there.
So now, as I understand, there's a $45 fee if you don't have a real ID at the ticket counter.
I'm not aware. I don't know what TSA or Homeland Security charges if you're not real ID. If you don't present a real ID driver's license, there's other forms you can present to get on the plane. But if you're presenting a not for federal use license, or you don't have a real ID compliant one, I'm not aware of what they charge.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think Jill may have done some research on that. Jill?
I can't speak to TSA, but the language in the Code of Federal Regulations in 6 CFR 37.17 says, to be accepted by a federal agency for official purposes, real ID, driver's licenses, and identification cards must include on the front of the card, unless otherwise specified below, the following information. Subsection F is address of principal residence, except an alternative address may be displayed for individuals for whom a state law, regulation, or DMV procedure permits display of an alternative address, or individuals who satisfy any of the following. If the individual is enrolled in a state address confidentiality program, which allows victims of domestic violence, if an individual's address is entitled to be suppressed under state or federal law or a court order, if the individual is protected from disclosure of information pursuant to the Illegal Immigration Reform and Migrant Responsibility Act of 1996, and in areas where a street and number and street address has not been assigned for U.S. mail delivery.
So it sounds like we could do that. And Kent, check with your sources too.
Yeah, I just
double
I wanna
check.
verify
That
something.
sounds like we can do it. Okay. All right. Thanks. And Kent, did we get your title and everything when you came up there?
I'm sorry.
I hope Leslie got it. Where'd Leslie go? Oh, there's Leslie. Yeah, did you get his title? Okay. Okay, thanks very much, Kent. All right, we'll get back on track if nobody has anything else. First verbal proponent we have is Representative Carl Turner, District 28. Welcome to the committee, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee, for the opportunity to come and talk to you about this idea. It's one that came to me from a constituent, and I had a ton of questions, as all of you have had so far. And after having the conversation back and forth, I really questioned, why would you want not to put your principal address? And it's really an issue of personal security, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But, for some, it could be viewed as very, your personal address on your driver's license. So anyway, so when he asked, of course, then I looked, and in fact, I've learned that in Kansas, you cannot, as you've just heard from the reviser, you can't currently put any address on there other than your principal address. I do believe that in the application process, they ask for both a principal as well as the mailing address, but nobody asked that of the previous conferees, who would probably have that answer. I don't, but I believe we now have the collection of those. So it really comes down to what is going to be presented on the license. And when I did more research, I found that we do, as has been said, have a program where folks that are victims of domestic violence with the Safe at Home program, there is ability for them to put a mailing address on their license. And I also learned that other states allow this. So a couple of them that I had seen in my research, and I had the research folks look at, were Georgia and California. And I believe Oklahoma also offers it. So all of the questions that have been asked here are great questions, but there must be answers to them because other states allow this option for their citizens. So I come back to the point that it's really about needlessly disclosing personal information. I think about judges. We've seen that they're getting more conscious of putting their address out there. Some elected people, as we would know, are getting more conscious about what information you put out there. And I looked back because I thought I remembered in the early days, now I'm showing my age, but my Social Security number it used to be my driver's license number on my license, of which I still have my license too. But yeah, so you think about that by today's standards, and who would think about putting your Social Security number on your driver's license? So really, I think it was a bill that I went ahead and presented because I think it's time to maybe think about, what do we really need to present and what don't we? And obviously, we don't want to get sideways with law enforcement, but as I said, it's somehow being done in other states, so I think there's a solution to that. It's not about replacing principal address. It would be collected and on the database. Thinking of some other questions. Real ID, I've seen a couple of takes on that, and maybe the other conferees will talk about that, but I believe it might be, worst case, that the folks that want to put an alternate address on their license won't be able to have a real ID, and whatever the consequence that has. So, but that would be their choice for that privilege. So, and Representative Hoheisel asked about the other ID cards, and when I was talking to the reviser, I'm not familiar with it, but but this bill, I only addressed the driver's license angle, and I said, well, if the committee's wanting to move this and they want to parallel it to those other identifications, that's certainly something that can be done in committee. So with that, I will stand for questions. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Representative Turner? Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. Next proponent is C. Reber with Overland Park, Kansas, and I believe he's online. Mr. Reber, welcome to the committee. Did I butcher your name?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Go ahead. Yep.
Well, my reason for submitting this proposal is when you give your driver's license as identification, you give a lot of your information away. And to me, it's a security item, especially if a hotel or a rental car agency, you're telling them where you live, how long you'll be gone, and when you're coming back. And that leaves, especially in this age of instant communications, it leaves a lot of nefarious people to take advantage of that. And all I'm proposing is on a voluntary basis, you put a post office box instead of your address on there. And I happen to know for a fact that you can have your real ID and that post office box because I've had that for 41 years prior to becoming a Kansan. A very proud Kansan, I might add, after 6 years. And I would like to also just mention in my previous experience with security, both offensive and defensive, people never come up with an idea for security. They're either exploiting something and want to cover themselves, or they're being exploited and they find out. This is one chance that we can say, well, here's a practice detrimental security that we can fix at virtually no cost and no impact on anybody who doesn't want it. And that's my spiel. It's a cheap price for home insurance, but you got to buy the home insurance before you get the coverage.
Thank you for your testimony, sir. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Reber? Okay, seeing none. Do we have any other proponent testimony today? Seeing none, we'll move on to neutral testimony. We have two verbal neutrals, we have one verbal neutral. First today is Ed Klump with Sheriff's Association, Chiefs of Police, and the Police Officers Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Ed Klump with the three associations the chairman listed. We're doing this as neutral testimony. We have a lot of unanswered questions like you all have. And so I'll try to go through those. First of all, I think you all understand that it's imperative that law enforcement officers in a performance of our official duties do have access to the home residence address. That's important because we have many things that we need to contact that person for, not by mail, but in person. Whether it's criminal investigations, traffic investigations, enforcement actions, and service of warrants, service of other legal documents, and delivering emergency messages to families in case of death or extreme medical emergencies. So all those things, it's very important we have access to this. So our question first came up is, what do we have access to if it's not on the driver's license? And I just since 1 o'clock received one of my answers, and it's a maybe. And that is, what do we have access to when we run the driver's license through our computer system? So just to explain briefly how that works, even if both addresses are in the motor vehicle system, what we see on the screen is developed in the connection between the KBI and the motor vehicle system. So I don't know what they're picking up on when they get that. We had one indication that probably we're getting both, but the one that they ran to see how that worked showed both the primary residence address in both places for both mailing and that. So I assume if you didn't request a different mailing address, that's what you get. So I think we're okay on that, but I'm still not 100% sure of that. And so that's the real issue for us, is how do we access that? I'll tell you that many of the people that we ask about this bill indicated their preference to have it on the driver's license out of convenience, I think, more than anything. I think as we discussed through that, we didn't convince everybody, but certainly as long as we can access it through the computer system, I think that serves the majority of our purposes as long as it's there. One question that came up is whether it would impact our e-citation systems, which is another electronic system that has to interconnect with motor vehicle. And we don't know which one it's pulling out there. That's something we'll have to check with our various vendors of those systems to see if that would require a change in the software in those systems. So those are some of our unknowns. Kansas already offers an address confidentiality program. I think that was mentioned by the research department. And that is specifically for like certain sex crime victims and things like that. And that can, human trafficking victims is included in that. And what that does is provide a substitute address that they can use anywhere. And then that mail comes there and then it gets forwarded to them at their real address. And on my testimony at the very bottom of the second page, you'll see a link there that'll take you to the Attorney General's website on that system, tells you how that works. So I want to go back to some of the things that was talked about. My original draft of my testimony went into Real ID. I pulled it out. And the reason I did is I couldn't tell. I saw the same thing Jill saw in the federal regulations. But when you read that, it's a little unclear. They use the term alternative address. And in another place, I think they talk a little bit about confidentiality addresses, which appears to be two different things. I found documentation that said no, the permanent residence address has to be on the ID for Real ID. I found where it didn't. So I don't know. And that's why I just took it out of my testimony, because I wasn't unsure. We just need to verify that. And Mr. Sell could do that, I'm sure, through contacting people at the federal level that really know how that works and get a firm answer from them. I will note that Real ID started in the mid 2010s. Kansas started working on it in 2017. So it hadn't been around but about 9 years yet. I do the discussion about the in-state, make sure it's an in-state mailing address. I think that would be a very good amendment to this bill to clarify that the mailing address also has to be an in-state. Otherwise, we're going to have people doing like they do with license tags, and they move to Kansas, and because they got a tag in Texas, they never transfer it here because they don't have to pay tax in Texas. We run into a lot of those cases where people come in from out of state, and it'll be years before they'll transfer it over to Kansas, where they're starting to pay the Kansas property taxes. ID cards, I'd caution against including ID cards on this. I'm not going to tell you it's a totally bad idea, but somebody mentioned the homeless that would have ID cards, and that's a challenge because their addresses sometimes are under the north end of the Kansas Avenue Bridge.
Ed, can I just ask a question? If they have to put the residence down and then they put this alternative mailing address down and you have access to the residence address, why are any of these concerns a big deal? Because you're always going to go to the residence address.
Yeah, we're going to go to the residence address, try and find them. I don't know how a homeless person, I bet you would find that they're using places like the rescue mission or someplace like that.
Right, but that's not a new issue.
No,
I mean,
that's not a new issue.
That's a current issue. So
That's correct. It's a current issue. And a current issue is keeping those addresses current.
Yeah.
And that's always been a huge issue. I do think this is going to complicate that because people will think, well, my mailing address hasn't changed, so that's good enough. That's all I need to have them. And really they don't. I did look at KSA 8-248, which covers that, and it does in the statute require keeping both up to date. But we know people don't do that. And I think that's something that somewhere along the lines we need to look at and try to figure out how we integrate some of our systems together so that, when people report an address at one place, we can verify it in the other. But that's another story for another day. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Representative Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. I'm going to ask you something that you kind of talked around that has been mentioned, and we've got a KHP representative in here too, so maybe he can weigh in on as well. when you're running what we used to call 28 and 29s,
Correct.
not everybody knows what that's wants and warrants, but the 28 is actually
It is the registration.
ID, the driver's
29's
license.
wants and warrants, yes.
What, is there going to be a situation or a conflict if the information that that person is given for their driver's license doesn't match up with what's on a warrant or something that the dispatch people are looking at and say, well, wait a minute, different address, and maybe everything else matches up pretty close, but they're just not sure. What kind of situation is that going to present for the person out there in the field?
Well, so generally speaking, when you're serving a warrant and you're out looking for that person, you're going to go with the address that's on the warrant. And when you go there and you find out it doesn't exist, which happens, or you find out they don't live there anymore, which
Vehicle
happens.
stop in the middle of the night.
Then we go back to other databases and start looking. And so one of the places we'd look is in the driver's license database. And we'd look also, I tell you, one that works really well is the accident database, because people tend not to lie about their address when they're in a motor vehicle accident for some reason.
Yeah.
They still do, but not at the rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Lindsay, or Representative Vaughn? She called you Lindsay. It's all her fault. Representative Lindsay.
I answered both. Thank you. I was just wondering, I understand the desire to be proactive, but are you generally aware of any of these types of crimes of opportunity happening on any broad scale? Meaning like the kinds that were mentioned in proponent testimony?
No, not on a large scale. I mean, once in a while, we will, during an investigation, we'll uncover where somebody has identified a person's address and then gone and committed a crime there. Most of the time, it's not where they're gone, but certainly that's a scenario that could happen. And sometimes that's going to happen. We don't know that, but where it happens most is I go in a place, for example, and I put a fancy stereo in my car, and they have your home address. You know, they ask for your address and stuff when they do the work, and then a week later it gets stolen. And we have had cases where we go back and it's employees of a place like that or friends of employees that get that information, then go commit a crime. So yes, it does occur. I don't think it's widespread, but it does occur.
Any other questions for Ed? Okay, thank you very much. We also have written neutral testimony from Roy Wise, Lieutenant, Kansas Highway Patrol, and he happens to be back there. So, Lieutenant Wise, can you come here? I'm just curious about this question, and you may, I don't know if you know or not, when you guys run a driver's license on your system, does the resident and mailing address show up, or do you know?
I think sometimes it does, and sometimes it does not. But I tell you, I'm not as familiar with field duties as I have been in my previous role on the Highway Patrol. I can tell you, and maybe Mr. Selk will be able to answer more of this as regards to emergency contact information. That's something I think that may be collected at the time of licensing that is offered, and that we use that at times. As you'll see in our neutral testimony, our largest concern has to do with next of kin notifications after an injury or fatal crash. Anything that would impede or slow that process down is a concern for us, but I don't think it's an insurmountable concern. So that's why we're just submitted written neutral testimony.
So now why having the mailing address on the driver's license, would that impede contacting next of kin, do you know?
We typically try to make those next of kin notifications at a physical address in person, out of courtesy to that person, to make sure they relayed the appropriate information. And so having just the mailing address would mean we'd have to look at secondary sources for that information to notify that person either at their residence, or if not at their residence, find someone who is their next of kin. So,
And I think it's imperative that you have easy access to both of those in your job. So can you check with your guys that are working the roads, and, I don't know how we can find that out. See if we have mailing address information when you pull someone over? Because I mean, it's kind of the same,
Yes, sir.
same thing. It's just what prints on the driver's license. It's really what shows up on your screen when you run one of those, I guess.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Lieutenant Wise? Okay. Seeing none. Do we have any other proponents? Any other neutrals? Any other opponents? Okay. Seeing none. I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing on HB 2584. Now, committee will move on to the hearing on HB 2553. I'll open that now. And Chris, could you give us an overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee House Bill 2553 provides for the PBS Kansas distinctive license plate. So standard distinctive license plates requirements would apply on regular registration, payment of license fees, and additionally the payment of the logo use royalty payment that'll be set by the Kansas Public Telecommunications Service. They could set that anywhere from $25 to $100, and it's an annual fee. Before the license plates will be issued, there has to be a guaranteed initial issuance of 250 license plates, and the organization has provide design costs up to $5,000 to the division. The logo use royalty payments would be credited to a newly created royalty fund for the Kansas Public Telecommunications Service, and payments would be made on a monthly basis to that organization. The provisions of the bill become effective July 1, 2026, with the issuance of the license plates beginning on January 1, 2027. I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Have any questions for Chris? Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do you know if any other states have PBS plates?
I'm not aware at the top of my head, but I'm sure we could get that information.
And my other question, and maybe you're not a, I'd like to know the history or typically what the funds that are raised go for. I'm a little bit concerned that this would go to programming. And I don't want to have the state or this committee in any way associated with sponsoring a program on television that we have no control over.
Sure.
Yeah.
All I
Go
can
ahead,
speak
Chris.
to is the royalty fund that's created is generally that can be used for the purposes of the organization.
We may save that for the conferees in support of it. Okay. Any other questions for Chris? Okay, seeing none. Please take a second and review the fiscal note, and we'll move on to our first verbal proponent, Representative Henry Helgerson, District 83. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. If I might ask, did they ever link up? Okay, all right, so they are, all right. Well, I'll let Victor handle the questions about this, but I want to give you a little bit of background. A couple of years ago, as many of you, if you know me, will understand, the Senate put in a couple of $100,000 for PBS statewide. They did this without a hearing on the Senate. They did it without a discussion on the House. It was snuck into an appropriation bill. Well, if you know me, that doesn't sit very well. And so the first chance I got, I pulled it out. And you can imagine that made me very popular with public television. But it was the process that I believe that you should have discussion about it on both sides of the aisle or both sides of the Capitol, and then make the decisions of what the funding is. Since that time, the federal government has decided to cut funding for PBS Kansas by approximately, I think it's 74%. 1.2 million, I think it says in here, but they'll be able to answer that. So their funding has been drastically cut. Now, for me, that's my favorite TV station, you know, bar none. I grew up with watching Mystery, the history, the history programming that they provide. But I believe that it was important to have, but I did not believe that necessarily you want to have the federal government or the state government being the #1 participant in the funding. I believe that not-for-profits have a role and we should assist them in every way we can, government should, in order to make them more successful. So I proposed to them the idea that we should have a local, and I say local, license plate for Channel 8, because I think that there are, I don't remember how many public television stations around the state. Many of them are done in coordination or sponsorship of the various universities. This one in Wichita is done by itself and has, I think it's 9,000 plus people that are members of supporting it in Wichita. So I'm a big fan of trying to encourage not-for-profits to raise the funds. And if this license tag bill is successful, they'll have to go out and raise the funds. And I think that that would be good for not only the state, but also for the community and for the programming that they provide. The only disappointment is I wanted a license tag with a big bird. And they said I can't have a big bird on my license tag. So that was the reason for the bill. And I think there's some people on that'll be happy to testify about it then.
Thank you, Representative. And just to clarify a few things, this is not your testimony then?
No, this is their testimony.
And then we'll have them tell us who it is testifying. But can you come up with some concise
I'll do that.
testimony for us to put in the minutes that summarizes what you said?
Yes. And this is some mock-ups that they proposed that you have also.
And then, does anybody else have any other questions for Representative Helgerson? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to, do we have any other in-person proponent testimony? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the online testimony. And I don't have any names for anybody that's online. So can you please introduce yourself and your title so that we have it for the record, and then verify that this is supposed to be your written testimony? Okay, go ahead with him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Victor Hawkstrom, and I'm the president and CEO of PBS Kansas, officially called Kansas Public Telecommunications Service Incorporated.
Hey, Victor, can I interrupt you for a second? How do you spell your last name?
Hogstrom.
Hogserom.
M as in Mary, yeah.
Okay, and your title again, I'm sorry?
President and CEO.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no problem. As you know, PBS Kansas, you may know PBS Kansas is 55 years old. And this station has come a long way. Recently, as Representative Helgerson just mentioned, the federal government eliminated all of its funding from us. We have to now raise 98% of our operating budget for the station. That's a huge challenge. Thanks to our state of Kansas, we get $50,000, and so that 2% is a mix of that $50,000. The establishment of a specialty license plate for PBS Kansas will help the station in another way by bringing in additional funds to help us meet the 98% level of fundraising that we have to do locally. And therefore, it will be quite useful. The funds will not go towards sponsoring any one program. They will help us with our local program. You see, my friends, PBS Kansas is the voice and platform for Central Kansas. We tell the stories of the people of Kansas and of the state of Kansas. We travel all over the state producing outstanding documentaries that people just rave about. Recently, our latest documentary was Grains of Glory, the Kansas Mennonite story. Thousands of viewers tune in to watch that. And so the funds from the specialty license plate will only go towards support of the continuation of our local programs like Kansas Week. That is the weekly political program that summarizes the activities of the top news of our state. Then we have Positively Kansas. We have Empowering Seniors. One-on-one, it's a program that invites guests to tell their stories about themselves. And the list goes on with several other programs. See, Taste, Do. We travel to different cities throughout Kansas to see what people can see, taste, or eat, and do in those cities. We help promote those cities, and we do a whole lot of other things locally. But then we have the national programs and the British programs that our members help us buy. Members meaning the 9,000 plus individuals who help support PBS Kansas. But those people cannot or do not give enough to help us meet our 98% budget threshold. So our current budget is a little over $3 million. We have to eliminate $1.2 million out of our budget. I was reading the other day and saw how other public television stations were laying people off all over the country because the funding had been eliminated. And we are striving with a small staff here, 25 members of the staff, to keep the station alive and well. And I'll tell you this, our budget of this station is not large enough to run the news department of one of the local commercial television stations. Our staff is not large enough to run the news department of any one of these local commercial stations. And so you see the need. It's very critical that if we want to keep the cultural, educational, and informational programming and the wonderful and exciting children's programming on television for the people of our community, then I urge you to please support this effort because it will help take us a long way. There was a question asked earlier if there were other states that are doing this. Yes, indeed. States throughout the country, a few examples, Arizona, Indiana, Montana, and the list goes on. So this matters now because you've heard about the funding cap, and you can help us. You can also help us at the state level by increasing funding for stations. There are 10 public media stations in Kansas, radio and television. There are 3 public television stations in Kansas, one in Bunker Hill, one in Topeka, and one in Wichita. And here at PBS Kansas, we are the largest station in the state. The rest of them are radio stations. So we urge you to please consider this because, as I usually say, every drop of water makes a mighty ocean. Your help in this regard will help us with the struggle of raising 98% of our budget. It will help us significantly. I'll pause for any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Hogstrom? Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the testimony. I assume he's still there. Okay, thank you. My question is, from what I can tell, the PBS Kansas is a 501c3 philanthropic organization and doesn't have any other types of funds that the contributions from the license plate would be able to go into.
I don't think, was that a question?
Yes. Do you have any other funds affiliated with PBS Kansas? You're a C3 nonprofit charitable organization. Is that correct?
Correct. 501c3. And the funds will go into our general operating funds to help help support our local programming that we produce. Programs that people rave about and talk a lot about and enjoy very much.
Representative Brunk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was listening to your testimony and also reading it here. $1.2 million shortfall that you're trying to close that gap. Did you articulate how much money you think you're going to be able to raise using this license plate mechanism?
We don't know yet because we've never done this before, but we will give it our best shot to promote it. And we have 9,000 plus viewers, and there are others who may want to display PBS Kansas Channel 8 on their vehicles, on the license tags. So, you know, we have no clue how much it will bring for us, but we hope it does very well. That's our hope.
Fair enough. No precedent. That's probably the good answer. Thank you.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Hogstrom? Okay. Oh, who? Did you have a question, Representative?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, same question as Representative Brunk. Took care of it.
Okay. All right. Do we have any other proponent testimony? Do we have any opponent testimony? Any neutral testimony? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close the hearing on House Bill 2553. Committee, we don't do some of this stuff now, we're going to run out of time. So I would like to work a couple of the bills that we've already heard that I think we can probably get through if we don't get bogged down. The first one is that I'd like to look at is House Bill 2585, providing for the Delta Waterfowl distinctive license plate. Chris, could you give us an overview?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee House Bill 2585 provides for the Delta Waterfowl distinctive license plate. Usual requirements for distinctive license plates apply, including a royalty fee established by the Board of Directors of Delta Waterfowl between $25 and $100, which is an annual fee. Initial issuance and design cost requirements apply, and all the royalty payments would be credited to a newly created royalty fund for Delta Waterfowl and made on a monthly basis to Delta Waterfowl. Money's in that royalty fund, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, committee. We're going to take up House Bill 2585. Are there any amendments to House Bill 2585? Representative Hoy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment to distribute, please.
Okay.
And I can go and explain it if that's okay while it's being distributed. This amendment just dedicates the funding for the license plate be made on a monthly basis to the Delta Waterfowl Foundation.
And if I remember correctly, did you you asked Comfrey and he didn't have any problem with it, if I remember correctly?
Yep, that was my understanding as well. So this organization does have a C3 and a C4, and this amendment would make it so it only goes to their charitable giving foundation.
Okay. So you've heard Representative Hoy's amendment. Is there a second? Second is by Representative Vaughn. Discussion on the amendment. There's no discussion. Would you like to close on your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is just a good rule of thumb to follow, that since state funds do help subsidize these license plates, including for postage and things, that we make sure that it's exclusively for charitable purposes. And with that, I close and move the amendment.
All right. You've heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, we're back on the bill. Is there any other amendments? Seeing none, is there a motion on the bill? Representative Helgerson.
Motion to pass the bill out favorably as amended.
Is there a second on the motion? Second by Representative Brunk. Motion by Representative Helgerson. Is there any further discussion? If not, would you like to close on your motion? Okay. And you said as amended, right? As amended. Okay. All right. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. Next bill I'd like to take up, Chris, just so you're ready, is House Bill 2220. It's the bill that we heard from last year. Representative Auerkamp was the proponent on that. Chris, if you'd give us an overview.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2220 would permit local authorities with jurisdiction within their jurisdiction over city residence districts to lower the speed limit in such districts to 25 miles per hour without an engineering and traffic investigation. The bill amends KSA 1560, which is a statute that allows local authorities to increase or decrease general maximum speed limits set for certain districts and highways. Currently, local authorities can reduce the maximum speed limit in a residence district to 20 miles per hour after the speed limit is determined to be reasonable and safe based on engineering and traffic investigation. Yeah, like I said, the bill would allow them to decrease that to 25 miles per hour without an engineering and traffic investigation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Chris? Representative Weigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't remember, I don't have it right in front of me. Was there something about school buses or vehicles approaching school buses in that bill?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Never mind then. Thank you.
If everybody remembers, this was primarily the bill where we've got some communities out there. The residential zone speed is 30 miles an hour. They wanted to be able to drop it to 25 without a traffic study. And to clarify that, there was some question about how clear it was. I had an amendment prepared. Chris, could you pass that out, please? As he's handing it out, and Chris, would you like to explain my amendment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the amendment would add language in new subsection I that's added as part of this bill. Say local authorities who have jurisdiction over city residence districts may reduce the maximum speed limit in their respective residence districts from 30 miles per hour to 25 miles per hour without the engineering and traffic investigation.
Anybody have any questions for Chris? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and make my amendment. Can I get a second? Second by Representative Helgerson. We're going to show some bipartisanship here, something we rarely do. Okay, so there's a motion by myself, second by Representative Helgerson. Is there any discussion on the amendment? And again, this just clarifies the way it was presented to us. If there is no discussion, I'll close on my amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The motion carries. We're back on the bill. Is there a motion, or are there any other amendments? Representative Collins.
I don't have an amendment, but I just want to make a comment that I do believe this is a good bill that, you know, municipalities that, I mean, there are some areas that need to be lower than 30, and it is a expense to have a traffic study done, and this would alleviate that problem in many cases, I believe.
Yeah. Representative, would you like to make a motion on this bill to pass it out favorably?
Okay, then I make a motion that we pass House Bill 2220 favorably.
Is there a second on the motion? As amended, right?
I'm sorry, as 2220 as amended.
Okay, second by Representative Hobson. Is there any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, Representative, would you like to close on your motion?
I close on the motion.
All right, everybody's heard the motion. All those in favor of the motion to pass House Bill 2220 favorably as amended, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. All right, committee, I'm going to try to figure out what we got to do tomorrow so I can tell you. Oh, you got that right there, don't you? Yeah, we're going to have 3 hearings tomorrow. We're going to have a hearing on House Bill 2607 that designates the official Kansas Railroad Hall of Fame. And some of my Democratic friends, can you make sure that Representative Martinez knows about this? She sponsored the bill. Then we're going to have House Bill 2615, which is a road naming bill for Brigadier General George H. Wark. And then we'll have House Bill 2604, which is a clarification of a definition for gross vehicle weight. On Wednesday, we plan on having 2 hearings. One would be HB 2617 about the number of characters you can have on a motorcycle license plate. And another one would be allowing you to have more than one disability plate. So that's kind of what we got to look forward for Tuesday and Wednesday. 2716.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Anderson, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. And that's not on this one. I know we've closed the hearing on the PBS. This question is directed at the ranking, I believe. Did you say these are different designs? Is it just the print off that's tough to look at, or are these different? Okay, okay. All right. They all look very similar. So
It's an IQ test, Representative. If you can't spot the differences, it says something about you.
Mr. Chair,
Representative Hall-Heisel.
can you give me the number again, that gross weight tonnage one?
2604.
And was that submitted by Department of Revenue?
It was.
It was, okay, that's
It should
all.
be,
All I need
it
to
should
know.
be germane to parking lots in Topeka.
We'll have that discussion once we cross that bridge, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Vaughn.
Thank you. Sorry to make you repeat all these. Could you repeat the first one and I'll text Representative Martinez?
Which one? Say that again.
It was the Hall of Fame.
Oh, 2607.
Thank you.
Sometimes I try to let everybody know if they've got a bill coming up, and sometimes I kind of drop the ball. Is there anything else for the committee? Okay. If not, thank you very much. We're adjourned.